Good evening and welcome to week 3 of sitting by my fireside and having a story. This week I am reading A Seaside Affair. It has some characters in it that you will know, Fern and Penny, etc, etc. And this one's a bit theatre-y. There's quite a few actors in it, only because I used to work in the theatre and obviously my father was an actor, a very good one, and so is my brother. He's a very good actor. So it's a bit drizzly outside, which is why my hair's looking a bit limp, lank. There you go. Anyway, let's start, shall we? Here we go. You should have woken me, silly. Ryan Hurst ambled into the sunny kitchen, scratching himself somewhere inside his rumpled boxer shorts. His girlfriend, Jess Tate, glanced up from reading the paper at the kitchen table and allowed her eyebrows to wrinkle briefly in distaste. Ryan bent down and gave her a kiss on her freckled nose, a small gesture he was prone to, which always managed to irritate her. What's for breakfast? He stretched out his muscular arms, then straightened up and yawned. His armpits gave off an unpleasant odour. Oh, thank you very much indeed. A daughter has brought me a fireside cup of tea, Jed. Yes, it's a pint mug. Why not? Yes, what's for breakfast? He stretched out his muscular arms, then straightened up and yawned. His armpits gave off an unpleasant odour. Jess pushed up her reading specs, sweeping her loose brown curls off her face, and gave him what she hoped was a relaxed smile. If your fans could see you now. Yeah, don't tell them. Anyway, baby, I'm all yours. He placed his hands either side of her head and thrust his hips and crotch towards her, mimicking a male stripper. She pulled a face and turned away. You pong. Go and have a shower and I'll make something to eat. You love me, baby, you know you do. He scratched his chest and yawned again. I've missed you, Jess. I really have. She looked into his dark, almond-shaped eyes, even more sexy with the tanned creases of crow feet at their edges. Yes, and I've missed you, she murmured, closing her eyes and forming her full lips into a shape for kissing. But he was already on his way to the bathroom. With a sigh, she got up and made her way to the fridge. There were plenty of eggs, a slab of cheese, and some mushrooms. Ryan hadn't touched a carbohydrate since the third person in their relationship, Cosmo Venini, had entered their lives. Will an omelette do you? She called, but he couldn't hear her over the sound of the shower. 2 pairs of beady eyes popped up over the dog basket next to the dishwasher. Jess bent down to tickle a brace of plump tummies. Daddy's home, girls. Elsie and Ethel were miniature dachshund sisters. Ryan had brought them home 9 months ago, the day he'd landed the title role in Venini, a TV series about the exploits of a globe-trotting classical conductor who moonlights as an MI5 agent. The show had been an overnight success, and as a result, the tabloids had given Ryan the dubious honour of dubbing him the thinking woman's brioche. Jess recalled that cold January afternoon when he'd poked his head round the living room door, the smell of frosty air clinging to him. She was huddled on the sofa in front of the TV, swaddled from head to toe in their duvet to combat the lack of heating, watching Deal or No Deal. You can see how long ago I wrote this. And wondering whether she should apply to be a contestant in the hope of bringing home some prize money. One look at Ryan's face told her his audition had been successful. Oh my God, you got the job! The icy temperature forgotten, she'd thrown off the duvet and leapt up from the sofa. Yep, call me Cosmo. He pushed the door wide open and stood in front of her, smiling self-deprecatingly, still wearing the huge, misshapen tweed overcoat that he'd bought in the charity shop the previous winter. For a moment, Jess could only jump up and down on the spot, beside herself with happiness. Then she ran across the room, hugged him tightly and kissed him. I'm so happy for you. This is it, Ryan. This is your big break. Oh my God. We can pay the gas bill. I think perhaps we can, he laughed, pulling her closer to him. Oh, he loosened his grip on her and created a little space between them. Almost forgot I bought you a present to celebrate. She smiled, wide-eyed with excitement, thinking of the silver earrings she'd pointed out to him that previous weekend. You mustn't, Ryan. You don't have the money yet. He opened his coat and rummaged in the deep poacher's pockets within. Ta-da! His hands emerged, clutching the two long bodies with impossibly short legs. What the hell? These were not the earrings. Who are they for? You. Why? Present. I don't need a present. My present is you getting this great job. In spite of herself, she reached out and tickled a pair of silken ears. When does shooting start? In a couple of days. Gosh, that's quick. Where? Jess asked. Northumberland. Oh, bit of a schlep from Willesden. Yeah, then Milan, New York, Hong Kong. She stopped the tickling and looked at Ryan. For how long? 6 months. His eyes dropped to the two warm, wriggling pups. Jess pushed her hair behind her ears, suddenly feeling all of her pleasure at the news drain away. 6 months? But you will be coming home, won't you, backwards and forwards? Ryan shook his head. Probably not. Oh, said Jess, suddenly deflated. He held the puppies up and spoke to them. So that's where you two come in. You're going to look after Mummy while Daddy's gone. Now she got it. The dogs were her consolation prize, a way of keeping her occupied while Ryan was away having the time of his life. So you get to swan off and I'm left holding the fort here on my own. And it isn't only that, Ryan. Pets are such a tie. She was aware of the whining noise that had crept into her voice. Suppose I get a job that means I have to go away. Who'll look after them then? He set the dogs down, and she heard their little tappy claws on the tiles as he put his arms around her again. She clung to him and inhaled the distinctive smell of his coat, burying herself in his neck. Don't be like that, Jess. I'm really trying here. Don't spoil it for me. Ryan ran the soap over his body and revelled in his newly honed physique. His personal trainer insisted upon his personal trainer, insisted upon by the production company, had worked him hard, but it was definitely worth it. Biceps, triceps, abs, quads, arse. Not bad for a 42-year-old. There was no doubt about it. Men were luckier than women. The older they got, the better they looked. George Clooney, Richard Gere, even Sean Connery in his 80s. For women it was tougher, and everyone in the business knew it. Helen Mirren and Meryl Streep were the exceptions. Poor Jess. She would struggle to find work now, unless it was playing a worn-down mum or a character role. Ryan got out of the shower and wrapped a large bath sheet around his waist. He checked himself out in the mirror, then pulled the towel a little lower to show off the muscled definition of his hips, stomach and groin. Donning his Cosmo face, he gave his reflection a seductive grin and growled, "Damn boy, it's only me, silly." Ryan loved going out in public. He always wore his film star in disguise, sunglasses and a baseball cap. The thrill of being recognised hadn't left him yet. Today, walking the dogs on a busy Hampstead Heath, he felt as if he owned the world. Vanini was top of the ratings. His face was on the cover of Esquire magazine. He'd just been voted the sexiest man in Britain, and it looked as if the Best Actor BAFTA was sure to have his name on it. Beside him, Jess was recounting what he thought was a rather tedious and seemingly interminable story about her agent and a part in a commercial she'd been put up for the previous week. I mean, I wouldn't have cared if she'd told me they were looking for actresses 10 years older than me. I would have dressed the part. But then to go and be told that I looked too middle-aged without even trying, it was just so humiliating. Ethel, come away from the ducks. I mean, do I really look middle-aged? My CV says 38. Where do these advertising execs fresh out of junior school think middle age begins? 25? Elsie, come away from the Labrador. He's too big for you. Honestly, Ryan, maybe I should start thinking about a bit of Botox or getting my hair cut or dyed. What do you think? I'm with her on that. But before Ryan had a chance to respond, they were interrupted by something that was becoming an ever-regular occurrence. Cosmo Vanini! It is you, isn't it? An over-made-up woman in her 50s, probably me in her 60s, was power-walking towards Ryan, who had stopped and was taking off his sunglasses, wrinkling his beautiful eyes into a smile. He held his hands out in a gesture of surrender. She arrived, puffing slightly, and all but elbowed Jess out of the way in her eagerness to accost Ryan. I knew it was you. What's your real name again? I've forgotten. Only Jess knew the slight tightness at the corner of Ryan's lips, signalling annoyance. George Clooney. He smiled, oozing charm. The woman laughed hysterically as if it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. He held out his hand to her. It's Ryan Hurst, and you are Jilly Lomax. I live over there. She pointed to a pretty pink house just outside the railings of the park. You are always welcome to pop in. I'm afraid he's very busy, Jess stepped in. I'm his partner. The kettle's always on. Jilly continued talking to Ryan. I think you're marvellous, and all those gorgeous locations you film in. Venice is my favourite. I've been to the Teatro La Fenice. It is so romantic. Ryan, you must go. The dogs are getting tired. Jess tugged at his jacket sleeve. Not some old charity shop jacket now, but a Prada summer collection number that had cost thousands. Sorry, darling. He smiled at Jess and draped his arm across her shoulders in a show of ownership. Oh! The woman swept a look over Jess from top to toe, then turned to Ryan. Perhaps your friend wouldn't mind taking a photo of us both on my phone. She pulled it from her pocket and pushed it into Jess's hand. Take a few, close up. Of course. Jess watched grimly as the woman cozied up to a willing Ryan and then proceeded to take a series of photos where she knew that the woman either had her eyes shut or her mouth at an unflattering angle. Just for good measure, she made sure the last couple of snaps were out of focus too. Oh, they're perfect, she announced, quickly turning the phone off and handing it back before the ghastly Jilly could look at them. Lovely to meet you. Come on, Ryan. They arrived at the park cafe during a lull between waves of pushchairs, toddlers and exhausted-looking parents. Having bought their coffees, they steered their way through the plastic tables until they found a relatively unsticky one in the sunshine. Jess tied Elsie and Ethel's leads to her chair and sat down gratefully. Ryan took a sip of the scalding and bitter cappuccino, then reached over and squeezed Jess's hand. That poor woman. I can't believe you could be so mean. You'll have ruined her day. Well, it made mine, rude cow. I'm invisible to your fans. They push past me and tread on my toes to get to you. No wonder casting agents reject me. I'm invisible. Ryan had heard this lament often enough to know where it was going, and he tried to head it off at the pass. Not to me, you're not. Really? You're my girl. Am I? You sure are. He took her other hand and gazed soulfully into her eyes, hoping it would have the desired effect. Even when you're away with all those gorgeous actresses, Jess peered at him intently. You can tell me the truth, you know. Are you sure you're never tempted? No, he lied. You know me better than that. He protested as if wounded by the accusation. I thought I knew you, she said, her voice wavering, but that was before. Oh, not this again, thought Ryan. He pulled one hand away from hers and swept it through the floppy long hair he'd been cultivating for Cosmo. Darling, that was 5 years ago. We are over that, aren't we? I can't believe I was such a fool and nearly lost you. Besides, can you imagine the bad press if I did that now and someone found out? This time it was Jess who pulled her hand away. Oh, that's nice. You're more concerned about the damage to your image than the hurt it would cause me. That's not what I meant, Ryan sighed, tired of Jess's insecurities. What you need is a job. A good job. One that will give you back your confidence. You're a great actress, the best. You're beautiful and clever and unemployable. Knowing he would have to choose his words carefully or else this could escalate into a full-blown row, Ryan tried to buy himself some thinking time by picking up his cup and taking 2 large mouthfuls of coffee. Clearly in no mood to let him off the hook, Jess fixed him with a flinty glare and allowed the uncomfortable silence to drag on, broken only by the tap-tap-tap of her foot against the chair leg. A sudden inspiration came to Ryan's rescue. Look, I've got 2 weeks off before we start filming the second series of Vanini. Suppose you and I take a break. Where? Well, how about Thailand? I mean, stay in one of those wonderful spas. Beauty treatments, exercise classes, sunshine. We could rent a little hut perched on stilts by the sea. Just the 2 of us. No distractions. I can't afford it. My treat. But I hate living off you. Ryan sighed in exasperation. Well, can't I treat you? We'll have to put the girls in kennels, and that's expensive. Oh, for God's sake, Jess. The two of us are going on a bloody holiday, and you'll bloody well like it. Okay? Right. Do you know that's 15 minutes gone already? So I shall say goodbye and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. In the meantime, stay safe and stay well. And I'm sure quite a few of you are having or have had your jabs by now. So that is so good, isn't it? So good. So take care of yourselves, and I will see you tomorrow. Okay? Bye-bye. Hello, welcome to Tuesday. We've got to Tuesday, so that's a positive, isn't it? It's been a good day here. It's sort of overcast and a bit drizzly, but all is well, and I'm busy writing the new book, so that keeps me occupied. And this is a real treat for me to do this every evening because it's a lovely thing to sit by the fire. In fact, it's going nicely now. It's almost getting a bit too warm for the fire, so I might be turning it off later as the week goes on. Let's see, shall we? Here we go, chapter 2. Now, we know that Ryan and Jess have jetted off to, or are jetting off to Thailand. But now, in this chapter, we are still back in Cornwall. Okay, here we go. Chapter 2 of, I should tell you, A Seaside Affair. A balmy breeze was drifting in off the sea, ruffling the hair of the two friends perched on Trevey's old harbour wall. Helen Merrifield and Penny Layton sat in companionable silence for a moment, luxuriating in the late afternoon sunshine. Cornwall had endured a rotten summer, endless days of cold and wet. Holidaymakers had remained admirably stoic, but the sun waited until late September, when the last people carrier, crammed with pale-skinned tourists in soggy anoraks, had left the county before putting in an appearance. Penny stretched out her long, tanned legs in front of her. "I'd forgotten how good a real tan looks," she said. "You look marvellous, Mrs. Cantor, as always," Helen replied, admiringly. "I keep telling you less of the Cantor, if you don't mind. No matter what the fuddy-duddies in the parish might think, I am determined to stick to Ms. Penny Layton. Running a successful production company in my own name is my one excuse for not getting sucked into the duties of a vicar's wife." Helen found it hard to imagine anyone brave enough to shoehorn Penny into the stereotypical vicar's wife role. The two of them had met when they were in their early 20s, both working for the BBC. Helen had never progressed beyond secretarial level, having fallen in love and fallen pregnant in short order, but Penny had worked her way up the ladder to director, making her name with an historical drama that became a hit both in the UK and America. Capitalising on her success, she'd set up Penny Layton Productions, and her drive and energy had ensured that even the recession could not prevent the company going from strength to strength. On the romantic front, however, she'd been a disaster, lurching from one unsuitable man to the next, until she met Simon. The shy, gentle, decent vicar had seemed an unlikely soulmate for Penny, and initially Helen had harboured misgivings about the relationships, but she was delighted to have been proven wrong. The couple had just returned from a holiday to celebrate their first anniversary, both of them positively glowing with happiness. "Oh, Simon was so sweet on the cruise, so romantic. This time yesterday we were just flying out of Venice," sighed Penny. "Lucky you. Piran and I could do with a holiday, but he's so busy. All the holidays with Gray seem to have blended into one. I remember usually being the one managing the children while he was off ogling all the young bathing beauties." "Ah, Gray. How is that ex-husband of yours? Any news?" "Well, according to the kids, Dahlia Darling is still giving him the runaround. A glamorous grande dame of stage and screen is an entirely different proposition to good old reliable me. I gather it's come as a shock to him, being in a relationship with a woman who's accustomed to having her own way." "Quite," Penny smiled at the thought. "And what have you been up to while I've been gone?" "Well, you're going to be very impressed with me. Remember what I said about trying my hand at a few articles for the local press? Well, after I'd submitted a bunch of homes and gardens pieces, to the Cornish Guardian, they turned round and offered me a weekly column. They want me to write about what's on locally, arts and crafts, shopping, eating out. The pay's not great, but it's a start. Well, bravo you. That'll suit you down to the ground. You've always had a genius for finding the best little cafes and galleries and boutiques and spotting what's going to be the next big thing. Well, I'd like to think I haven't completely lost my London cool, Helen returned with mock modesty. Better not let the locals hear you say that. They'll hang you out to dry. They both laughed. But then Penny asked, speaking of locals, how are things with Piran? Still the embodiment of the brooding male? Yep. Things are okay, though. Yeah, I know he loves me. And I know that if we lived in each other's pockets or under the same roof, we'd drive each other mad. It struck Helen that she was trying to convince herself as much as her friend, and she let out a small sigh and admitted, all the same, I wouldn't mind a bit of romance every now and again. Well, I thought he was your dream man, Marco Pierre White and Heathcliff rolled into one, all broody-moody and drop-dead gorgeous with it. He is gorgeous, and my heart still flutters, and all those things. It's just so... Penny chimed in on the final word. Piran? They both grinned. He wouldn't be seen dead on a Mediterranean cruise, said Helen. Well, hardly surprising. One look at Piran and the crew would have him swinging from the yardarm. Yeah, true, Helen laughed. He hasn't had a haircut all summer and he's starting to look even more like Bluebeard than Bluebeard himself. I've got your present, by the way. Penny rummaged in her voluminous handbag. Here. She passed over a duty-free carrier bag. Ooh, a treat. Helen pulled out a bottle of her favourite perfume, Cristal by Chanel. Pen, thank you. She threw her arm around her friend's tanned shoulders and hugged her. I'm going over to Piran's tonight. I'll splash plenty of this on. Who's cooking? Piran. Dinner will be whatever he catches this afternoon. Helen tucked the bottle of perfume safely into her straw shopping bag before asking, by the way, where's Simon? Oh, back at the vicarage. He's going through all his post and emails, and then he's got his sermon to write for Sunday. I thought I'd better leave him to it. Did he wear his dog collar on holiday? It took some persuading, but no, thank God. It seems being a vicar is a bit like being a doctor. The minute people find out your profession, particularly in a confined space like a boat, they start coming to you with their problems. He'd have had everyone asking him to marry them or cast out demons or whatever. Helen couldn't suppress a snigger at the thought of Simon casting out demons on a cruise liner. She shook her head in mock reproach. Penny, you are an awful vicar's wife. Tell me about it. I keep reminding him that I married him for who he is, not because of his job. The worst vicar's wife in Britain, that's me. Oh, hey, that's a good idea for a programme. Let me write that down. Penny pulled out her iPhone and spent a few moments typing. When she'd finished, she couldn't resist checking her emails. Thanks to the huge success of Mr. Tibbs, a series based on Mavis Carew's popular crime novels, filmed locally and starring Dahlia Darling, she was being feted by TV executives worldwide, eager to get their hands on a second series. She was also being inundated with screenplays and requests from writers and their agents, convinced that Penny Layton Productions had the Midas touch. As she checked her emails, the phone rang, and she answered it. Hello, Simon. Yes, I'm in Trevet with Helen. No, I haven't seen the paper. The local one, okay. I'll get it now. Why? Oh, well, what do they expect you to do? Me? Oh, let me look at it and then we can talk later. Love you too. Bye. What was that about? Asked Helen. Something about saving the pavilions? Let's get a paper and I'll buy you a coffee, maybe even a glass of vino. Piran Ambrose was in his office at the Trevet Museum, hurrying to finish the day's tasks so that he could get out in his boat and catch the tide for a spot of mackerel fishing. He swore under his breath when the phone on his desk rang. His hand, hovering over the receiver, indecisively picked it up. Yes? Piran? It's me, Simon. Piran breathed a sigh of relief. He and the vicar had been friends for many years, supporting each other through some difficult times. Simon, welcome home. How was the holiday with your maid? Simply wonderful. Marriage is to be recommended, Piran. Piran decided to ignore the obvious implications in this comment. So, how can I help you, Simon? It's the pavilions. There's a report in the paper that the council are about to sell the place to a coffee chain, possibly Café Olé. Good idea. The building's falling apart and needs money spending on it. Or knocking down. Simon was shocked. You can't mean that. You're our local historian. Surely you of all people want to save the old place. Piran put one leg up on his desk and tipped his chair back, glancing at the clock on the wall. If he didn't get a move on, he'd miss the tide. It's an eyesore, Simon. We're not talking about some Frank Matcham theatre of distinction here. The Pavilions is a 50s, flat-roof, jerry-built dinosaur that hasn't made any money in decades. But the Sea Scouts and the WI and the Trevay Players. Piran sniffed with disdain at the mention of the local amateur dramatic society. And the Arts and Crafts Show and the... Exactly. It's not exactly a top-drawer venue, is it? Piran, please. I've had emails from all sorts of people asking me to be on the board of an action committee, and I thought you might want to lend us your support. Maybe dig out some facts of historical importance? Piran scratched his beard and pulled on the gold hoop in his ear. OK, well, let me think about it. I knew you'd help. Hang on, I haven't said I'd help. I've said I'll think about it. The men rang off, each hoping the other would see sense. Swinging his leg off the desk and springing to his feet, Piran hurried out of his office before the phone had a chance to ring again. Down in the lobby, Janet, the museum receptionist, was so engrossed in her newspaper that she didn't look up until he called, "Bye, Janet. I'm finished for the day. See you tomorrow." "Piran, sorry, I didn't hear you. I was reading this." She held up the front page so he could read the headline. "The end for the Pavilions." I'd be ever so sad to see the old place go. My parents used to take me there every summer to see the big shows. Remember when Morecambe and Wise had a season here? Sold out every night. They were on the same bill as, what were they called? The Bachelors. That's it. Lovely boys they were. Great music. Not exactly the Beatles, though, were they? Sniffed Piran, unimpressed. Not my thing, Janet. See you tomorrow. Janet persisted. But it's heartbreaking. There'll be a lot of people with a lot of memories. It's a white elephant and an architectural mess. Leaving Janet shaking her head in disbelief, he stamped out of the door with Jack, his devoted Jack Russell, scampering behind him. I think we've had 12 minutes already. Well, I'll stop there and we will continue tomorrow and see what's going on with the theatre and the actors and everything else. Take care of yourselves. As always, look after yourselves. Sleep tight. See you tomorrow. Bye. Hello, welcome to Wednesdays by the Fireside with me. Day 3 of the week. So happy that you okay? I'm okay. I'm happy because I've been out in the garden and I've planted some dahlias in pots. I got them from a place called Farmer Gracie in Holland. They sent me these gorgeous tubers. They look really top. So I've planted about 20 of those today. And by a bit of luck, by the end of the summer, autumn, they should look lovely. I love a dahlia. Dahlia is everything that a chrysanthemum would like to be, really, don't you think? I mean, chrysanthemums are beautiful, but they're so kind of chrysanthemum-y, whereas the dahlia's like, whoa, lovely, gorgeous. Anyway, I got lots of different colours, and I had to get the old Bishop of Llandaff ones. They seem to be an old favourite, and I really like them. Sorry, I'm looking a bit as if I have really come out of the garden, which I have. Okay, here we are. This is A Seaside Affair, and we're on chapter 3, and it's a story about actors who are going to start gathering in Trevay in Cornwall. So there's Ryan, who's the big film star. There's his girlfriend Jess, who's currently out of work, and Penny has married Simon, the vicar, and her friend Helen going to try and save, I believe, I can't tell you the ending, can I? The old theatre that's been sitting in Trevay for a long time and housed all the old summer shows in the days, I remember 70s, 80s, when all the big stars would go and play the end of the pier and things. But the Pavilions is actually up on the cliff above Trevay. So here we go. This is another character called, sorry about my hair, Ollie Pinkerton. And here he is. Ollie Pinkerton was feeling good. The gym was buzzing today and his pre-breakfast workout had gone well. He zipped up his jeans, checked his gelled hair in the changing room mirror, hefted his sports bag onto his shoulder and went out into the members' lounge where he queued for a skinny mochaccino. "Hi, Ollie, what can I get you?" asked the smiling woman behind the counter. "Oh, the usual please, Lou. You still on for tonight's show?" It was Lou's silver wedding anniversary, and he had given her a couple of complimentary tickets for the Merry Wives of Windsor at Stratford's Royal Shakespeare Company. "Oh, yes, Graham and I are really looking forward to it. You sure it's okay?" "Ever so kind of you. We couldn't afford those prices." "It's my pleasure." Ollie gave her his winning beam of a smile. He hadn't bothered to tell her that the tickets were comps and he got them for nothing. "We'll be nicely warmed up for you after this afternoon's matinee," he said, opening his wallet to pay for the coffee. No, Ollie, on the house." He trousered the £5 note speedily and thanked her. Just because he was an actor with the Royal Shakespeare Company didn't mean to say he was minted. Collecting his coffee, he threaded his way through clusters of tables and chairs to an empty two-seater brown leather sofa in front of a huge television screen showing highlights of a tennis tournament. On the seat next to him was the copy of the Daily Mail. He flicked through it, only half engaged, until he saw a large photo of himself with a girl who wasn't his girlfriend. Shit! The headline blared, "Still seeing red, Ollie?" Oh, shit. His phone began to vibrate in his back pocket. He pulled it out, wincing when he saw the caller ID. His pocket rocket rock star girlfriend, Red. "Hi, babe," he said, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Didn't expect to hear from you this early. How's Sydney? How's the show?" "How am I supposed to do a show where my boyfriend is shagging around?" was Red's blisteringly chilly response. "What are you talking about?" "Henrik just showed me the Mail online." Ollie resisted the urge to swear. Red's smarmy PA seemed to think the best way to ingratiate himself with Red and worm his way into her good books was to make her suspicious of everyone else. Unfortunately, he had succeeded. Red wouldn't hear a word against the little creep. When Ollie had been unwise enough to joke that Henrik was more PITA than PA, PITA stands for pain in the ass, she turned on him, demanding, "What the hell's that supposed to mean?" "You know, pain in the ass, PITA. It's a joke." "Another of your stupid public schoolboy jokes, eh? Well, forgive me and my Wolverhampton Comprehensive School denseness." "Oh no, hang on, I'm not that dense, am I? I'm 67th on the Sunday Times rich list. I'm number 1 in 14 countries, and I have an entourage of 8, including Henrik, my PA." As a result, Ollie kept his opinion of Henrik's latest helpful gesture to himself and instead tried to explain, but Red wasn't listening. Red wasn't listening. "I'm going to have to cancel the show tonight," she wailed. "I can't go on stage knowing what an unfaithful shit you are." She was so loud that he held the phone away from his ears. Noticing people on nearby tables casting curious glances in his direction, he tried to muffle the sounds coming from the earpiece while holding the phone close to his mouth. "Red, honey, I love you. It's just a picture of some girl who saw the show last night and was waiting at the stage door for an autograph. She was with her fiancé. He took the photo." "Oh, yeah? Then how the hell did it get into the papers?" "Well, I don't know. Maybe he uploaded it to Twitter, or maybe he sold it. I don't know, honey. You have to believe me. I don't even know her name. An autograph, a photo, and then it was home to bed on my own, dreaming of you." "Yeah," she snivelled. "Yeah. So you'd be pleased to see me if I jumped on a plane tonight and came home?" He felt a tap on his shoulder and, looking round, one of the young actresses in the cast of The Merry Wives of Windsor, damp from a swim, was miming a cup of coffee. He shook his head, pointed to the phone and raised his eyebrows in despair. She nodded, pulling the corners of her mouth down comically, and went to the bar. "Ollie, are you still there?" Red's shrill voice boomed from the earpiece. Oh, I turned 2 pages at once. Good job you're not paying money for this. I'm not reading brilliantly, am I? Yeah, sorry. There must have been some dropout on the satellite. I missed what you said," he said, hoping that she'd forgotten what she had said. There was a pause while she smothered the mouthpiece on her end and spoke to someone. He couldn't catch what she was saying and was straining to make out the words when her voice suddenly came back loud and clear. You don't know the pressure I'm under here. There's 32,000 people out there, and just because they've had to wait a bit, they're booing. You don't know how you're breaking my heart. How long have they been waiting? Not long, maybe 2 hours. You've kept them waiting 2 hours? You've kept them waiting 2 hours by being such a shit to me. Someone was calling to her in the background. She muted the phone for a moment, then came back on the line. Okay, I'll have to go. I'll Skype you later. We need to talk. Yeah, honey, he groaned inwardly. I love talking. Now go get 'em, Tiger. Gemma, his actress friend, thumped down next to him, licking a splash of coffee from her wrist. Go get 'em, Tiger. She arched a sardonic eyebrow. Sue, rock and roll. Oh, Jim, this long-distance, high-profile relationship stuff is not for sissies. Gemma took a sip of her cappuccino and wiped the froth from her lips with the tiny paper napkin. Any kind of relationship would do me at the moment. Look at this, he said, handing her the newspaper. Ah, she read the text. Nice photo. Thank you. Not you, the mystery girl. She's very pretty. He snatched the paper from her and dropped it on the floor by his feet. You're not being very helpful. They sat and watched the tennis players on the screen for a few moments. Then Ollie asked, Are you a jealous person, Gemma? I haven't had enough boyfriends to find out. Maybe I haven't loved anyone enough to care. Don't you get jealous of Red? All those male groupies hanging outside her hotels and following her around the world? No. You don't love her enough then. It's not that. I'm just not the jealous type. She wouldn't do anything. She doesn't get the opportunity on tour. Anyway, she's surrounded by her hangers-on and hustled from airport to hotel to stadium to hotel to airport. I've seen it. Our first date was at the O2. I went to watch her from the wings. Great date. Intimate. Shut up. Just saying. Yeah, well, anyway, I watched her give her heart and soul to the audience. The way she worked with the band and her dancers, she blew me away. Then, the minute she sung her last note, she takes her bow and runs off stage. Her dresser is waiting with a big warm dressing gown to wrap her in. Her assistant dresser is waiting with a huge towel to wrap her sweaty hair in. And then she's just like, whoosh, straight through a path made for her by security, past all the backstage crew, and out into a blacked-out limo. The band will still be playing. The crowd will still be chanting. The police will have closed the exit roads for a 5-minute window to get her out, and in 10 minutes she'll be back in her hotel room watching a late-night movie all on her own. Oh, no wonder she's bonkers. It's tough on her. She's only 24. She's been a star for 3 years since she blew the world away on the X Factor. The world wants to know everything about her. And you. Ollie's face clouded over. I hate it. Well, lots of actors would give anything to get their profile as high as yours. Why not go with the flow and enjoy the ride? Well, I don't want to be a famous celebrity boyfriend. I want my work as an actor to speak for me. Oh, get over yourself. We're all a bunch of children dancing in front of our parents. Look at me, Mummy, look at me. Ollie couldn't help but laugh. Okay, perhaps there is a bit of that, but I still want a private life and a private relationship with my girlfriend. But that's not likely to happen when there's a fortune to be made selling photos of us. The irony of it is, while the paps are cashing in, I'm skint. Gemma nodded with understanding. You worked for the RSC for kudos, not cash. Red expects me to fly out and join her whenever I have a break, but the transatlantic flights and hotels are cleaning me out. Have you told her that? I can't. She'd offer to pick up the bill, and I don't want that. I could never be a freeloader. Gemma patted his knee. You are too noble for your own good, and that's your trouble. Now, want to walk with me back to the theatre? No, I've got some stuff to do. Okay, see you later. Ollie watched as Gemma made her way to the exit. The stuff he had to do, calling in at the dry cleaners for his shirts, stopping by the cash point to draw some money, wouldn't have prevented him walking back to the theatre with her. The real problem was that he couldn't risk being photographed with Gemma. That would only lead to another row with Red. Outside, the sun was surprisingly warm, and tourists were wandering happily along the Stratford-upon-Avon High Street, stopping with little or no warning whenever something in a shop window took their fancy. Ollie cursed under his breath as he employed all his navigational skills to avoid tripping over them. His call with Red had annoyed him. Lately, all his calls with Red had annoyed him. She was a great girl, funny, pretty, great body, talented, never there. It was the never there bit that messed things up. They'd met when she'd come to see him in a fringe production of Joe Orton's Loot. He'd had the best reviews of his life, and it was a game changer for him. The production was the hottest ticket in town, and he'd heard backstage that Red was in the audience. She was already huge in the UK, but hadn't quite gone global. And back then it had just been a matter of dodging the paparazzi, which meant she was still able to enjoy the odd night out. After the performance, he'd received a sweet handwritten note in red ink on the back of a fag packet. Fancy dodging the paps with me after the show? Ah, with a kiss. They'd slipped out of a side entrance, just the two of them, and managed to hole up in a tiny bar, blissfully unrecognised, while her minders parked up nearby. She made him laugh. She seemed kind, genuine, in touch with her roots. The connection was instant. She told him about her upbringing in the Midlands and how hard it had been on her family, enduring the constant tension after X Factor. He told her about his father walking out when he was just a kid, how he'd never really fitted in at public school, and how much he wanted to become a good actor. Their lives were different, but something really clicked between them that night. But no sooner had they got together than her star had gone stratospheric. Ollie was 28. He loved life. 15 months ago, he'd had a great social life, but all that had closed down for him, thanks to Red and her fame. A big, fat problem. Did he love her enough to accept it? Was she the one? He knew that she was the most exciting woman he'd ever known, so far. But in the time that he'd known her, she had changed. The stress of her lifestyle had taken its toll, and the initial excitement of their relationship had been replaced by a kind of prison. That was it. He'd lost his freedom, and she was losing herself. He stopped walking and stared at the swans floating elegantly on the river by the theatre. They were free and wild. One of them got out of the water and waggled up to him, hoping for food. "Sorry, mate, nothing for you." He stood still while the large bird pecked fruitlessly at the chewing gum stains on the path, then stood tall, looking at him in disappointment, before giving a shake of its feathers and wandering off forlornly. Ollie saw the tag round one slender black ankle. Oh, not wild after all, boy, eh? Tagged, same as me. He shook his head. Oh, to be free again. Oh, nearly 15 minutes, I've done it again. Well, keep overdoing the 10 minutes, but who cares? It's quite fun, isn't it? So you take care of yourselves, and see you tomorrow. I hope you get out in some fresh air. I hope you're feeling well. If you've had a jab, I hope that your arm is feeling okay. You haven't had any reactions, and that at last we're feeling some kind of security. Life is moving on now to the sunny uplands, hopefully. Okay, good night. See you tomorrow. Bye. Hello, my dears. How are you doing? It's 6:30. It's Thursday night. It means it's Fern's Fireside Stories. Yeah, it's just right. This is a new log burner, and it's one that's much more efficient. So you don't have to put so many logs on it. It doesn't burn down so quickly. I really need a haircut. I'm so sorry about that. But anyway, here we go. So this is day 4 of a Seaside affair, and for this chapter, we are back in Cornwall with Fern. Okay, here he goes. And they're talking about saving the pavilions, the local theatre in Trevay. Fern, gutting half a dozen fresh mackerel with a vengeance, was clearly in a bad mood. "I'm a historian. Anything after the Second World War is of no interest to me. The pavilions could slide into the sea and I wouldn't give a toss." He slapped a fillet into a plate of flour. "Unless it's uncovered an Iron Age settlement or bloody King Arthur's Camelot, which doesn't exist, by the way, I'm not interested." His 2 cats, Bosun and Sprat, were winding themselves round his feet, waiting for scraps. He chucked down a couple of fish skins. Helen, who had rolled her shirt sleeves up and was busily covering the fish fillets in flour, patting them gently before placing them on a clean tea towel ready for the frying pan, turned to him crestfallen. I hate that Camelot wasn't real. Are you sure? Aye. But there was an Arthur, wasn't there? There's no evidence, no. Piran carried on focusing on the job in hand, his curls bouncing over his forehead as his strong, weathered hands dexterously removed the last remaining bones. So no Guinevere? Piran slapped the final fillet on the plate in front of her and pushed his hair out of his eyes with the back of his wrist. No, thank God. She was supposed to have broken his heart, wasn't she? Ran off with his best mate. Typical bloody woman. Typical chauvinistic comment. He stuck his sharp knife point down into the wood of his kitchen table so that it quivered like an arrow. I'm making you supper, aren't I? Helen opened her eyes wide and cooed. Oh, you are 100% new man. Would you pour me a glass of wine? He glowered at her for a moment, then kissed her. Don't go pushing your luck, maid. The mackerel were delicious, served simply with hunks of buttered crusty bread and large tumblers of local cider. Helen got up, threw the bones in the bin, and made a move to put the plates in the sink, but Siren reached up and stopped her. Don't bother with those, they'll keep till the morning. He found her hand, and she felt the roughness of his skin in her palm. You smell nice. You staying tonight? Would you like me to? Well, I'm not going to beg. It's your decision, Helen. Well, sometimes I'd like you to beg. I thought you didn't like to feel crowded, that you liked your independence. I do. An image of Gull's Cry, the dream cottage that she'd made a reality, flitted through her mind. Once the children had flown the nest, she'd realised that she couldn't go on sharing a Chiswick townhouse with her philandering husband, so she'd asked Gray for a divorce and uprooted herself to Cornwall and to the village of Pendragon. She'd settled in so well it was hard to believe only 2 years had gone by since she moved in. And after years of playing housekeeper and homemaker to her family, it was a luxury to be free to do her own thing. She was brought back to the present by Piran squeezing her hand. Something tells me there's a but coming, he said. No, well, sort of. I do like my independence, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't appreciate a bit of spontaneous passion now and then. Why are bloody women so contrary? Growled Piran in mock exasperation. If it's passion you want, maid, I'll sling you over my shoulder and carry you upstairs. Ooh, would you? Right now? Her laughter echoed up the stairs as Piran made good on his threat. Piran's bed was a big old wooden thing, made, he said, out of the wreckage of a fishing boat that had run aground years before. It was the most comfortable bed Helen had ever known. She stretched herself out, then curled herself around Piran as he slept with his back to her. Bosun and Spratt lifted their heads as they were gently bobbed about on a sea of tartan blanket, waiting for her to settle. When she was finally still, they put their heads down and curled their tails around their noses. Piran mumbled something. Helen lifted her head slightly, the better to hear him. What did you say? He spoke a little louder. I said, what time is it, cloth ears? 7:15. Want a cup of tea? Yes, please. For a big man, he moved with a fluidity that never failed to amaze her. She watched as he bent down and picked up his discarded T-shirt from the night before, then sat on the edge of the bed to pull it over his head, as all men do. He looked faintly ridiculous and even vulnerable as he stood up, displaying his naked lower half. He checked his testicles unconsciously before shuffling his feet into an ancient pair of leather slippers and reaching for an equally ancient dressing gown that had been draped over a chair. Bosun and Spratt's ears pricked up, their eyes watchful, in case this was a false alarm or whether it was looking good for breakfast. At the words, "Come on, boys," they both sprang off the bed and followed their owner downstairs. Helen sank back into the tangle of soft cotton sheets and blankets. Piran was never going to be a duvet man, and closed her eyes. She could hear him talking to the cats and the scrape of their food bowls as he placed them on the tiled floor of the kitchen. She could hear the whoosh of the water from the tap as he filled the kettle, and then the radio came on, tuned to the local news. With a sigh, she snuggled into the pillow and was almost drifting back into her sleep when she heard a loud, "Oh, for Christ's sake!" and the sound of Piran's footsteps marching towards the bottom of the stairs. "Ellen, come down here, they're on the bloody radio." Who? She called back, but he had returned to the kitchen and was out of earshot. Hurriedly pulling on one of Piran's old shirts, she made her way to the kitchen. He was standing at the counter, staring at the battered radio and listening intently. What? She asked. Shh! She shut up and listened. It seemed to be a phone-in. Pam, the show's presenter, was talking to a female caller. The point is, Pam, this is an important and much-loved part of our heritage. The community still uses the pavilion's buildings, and it mustn't be allowed to fall into the hands of some global coffee chain. Pam. This wouldn't have anything to do with the fact that you run 3 of Trevet's cafes and you don't want the competition. Caller. It's not about money, it's about what the pavilions means to us as a community. Pam. And when did you last go to the pavilions? Caller. The theatre is a piece of Trevet history and should continue to be so. Pam. When did you last buy a ticket to attend an event there? Caller. That's irrelevant. It's not a matter of when I last went there or when you last... Pam. I went 6 months ago to an antiques fair. I was shocked at the state of the place. It reeks of damp. The window frames are rusted. Some of the panes of glass are cracked and boarded up, and it needs a lot of money spending on it. Now, Café Olay taking over might just be the best thing that could happen to pavilions. Let's see what the caller on line 2 has to say. Second caller. Good morning, Pam. My name is Mrs. Audrey Tipton. I have lived in Pendragon for the last 40 years. It's a quiet, unspoiled village with a strong community. Pam. Audrey, do you think the pavilion should be preserved as a theatre? Audrey. Well, yes, and that's my point. Trevet is a 10-minute drive from my house in Pendragon and offers everything I need for shopping and entertainment. Now, the pavilions should be fully restored by the council, so it'll be once again the top attraction for our summer visitors. Pam. The council say it's a white elephant they can no longer afford. You see, Café Olay promised that their redevelopment of the site will not only attract more visitors to the area, it'll guarantee jobs for local people. Now, that's a good thing, surely. Audrey. I have started an action group with several high-profile local supporters, and we will fight the council all the way. Pam. You've got a fighting fund, have you? Audrey. We are establishing one right now with the help of a local television producer, Penny Layton. She's our vicar's wife and very hands-on with local issues. Also, Piran Ambrose. Pam. A local historian we know well here at Cornwall Radio. Audrey. Indeed, well, Piran has assured the action group that he can prove the historical importance of the pavilions, and Audrey was cut off mid-flow by Piran pulling the plug. Pointing at the now silent radio in frustration, he turned to Helen. That bloody Tipton woman. I've assured her blasted action group of no such thing. I haven't been approached by them, and if she bloody well approached me, ooh. Leaving him ranting at the kitchen sink, punctuating each sentence by slinging one of yesterday's dinner plates noisily into the bowl, Helen picked up her coffee and tiptoed back to bed. How are we doing? We're doing well. Piran wasn't the only one left apoplectic by Audrey's comments. Over at the vicarage, Penny was pacing up and down the kitchen in a fury. How could she be allowed to say that stuff? Now she's put my name out there, people will think I'm committed to the cause. Simon ran a hand over his balding head and ventured tentatively, I know, she's put you in a terrible position, darling, but his chocolate eyes took on a pleading look. I'm sure you could phone a few of your actor friends to help, couldn't you? It's not as simple as that. These people have lives of their own and busy diaries. Plus, they're swamped with requests to do something for nothing. No, I can't do it. I won't. Besides, what time do I have to get involved? We're about to start filming the new Tibbs series. I won't have a moment to call my own until that's done and dusted. I see. Simon's expression hovered somewhere between expectation and disappointment. Now, don't give me that look. Penny hated letting down her loving and devoted husband, especially when he asked so little of her. He turned away. Well, I must get on, things to do. Penny could feel the hot itch of guilt and duty creeping up the back of her neck. Oh, bloody pavilions. Oh, what did any of it have to do with her? Oh, all right, she sighed. Simon's face lit up and he stepped forward to kiss her, but she restrained him with a gentle hand on his chest. No, darling, I'm not saying I'll do it. I'm saying, all right, I'll think about it. Really? He beamed at her delight. Oh, Pen, I knew you wouldn't let us down. No promises, Simon. This won't be easy, and I'm not a miracle worker. Oh, yes, you are, said Simon, giving her a hug before heading off to prepare for morning service. And don't forget, Penny called after him, I'm doing this for you, not bloody Audrey Tipton. There we are. Nearly 12 minutes. Well, take care of yourselves again. Look after yourselves tonight. Hope all is well. And everybody you love is well. And if not, I wish them well. So take care. And shall I see you tomorrow, 6:30, same place? The final chapter of A Seaside Affair. I'm quite enjoying it, are you? I haven't read it for years. Anyway, take care of yourselves. Bye. Hello. Welcome to Friday and Fern's Fireside Stories. It is A Seaside Affair this week, and we are hearing about how the Pavilions Theatre in Trevay are hoping to be saved by the local community. Sorry about my creaky stool. Piran and Penny have both been asked to help, and they're thinking about it. So here we go. Piran was hunched over his laptop at Helen's kitchen table, an enormous pile of ancient copies of the Trevay Times stacked at his elbow. He'd been sitting like this, growling and grumbling for a couple of hours. Bloody wild goose chase, the Pavilions ain't old enough to have any history. Having left Penny to make her entreaties to her famous friends, Helen had come home and made a coffee for Piran before abandoning him to his growling and whinging. She was now ensconced in her cosy sitting room with Jack, Piran's devoted Jack Russell. The pair of them were snuggled on the sofa, absorbed in an old black and white film on television. It was just getting to the bit where Betty Davis's character would utter the famous line, "Fasten your seatbelts, it's going to be a bumpy night," when there came a shout from the kitchen. "Helen, come here! Just a minute, come here now!" "What's the magic word?" "Oh, for God's sake!" His chair scraped on the floor and he marched in with a yellowing newspaper in his hand. She paused the film. "What?" "Look here. It's a review for the opening night of the Pavilions back in 1954. She read silently for a moment or two, then looked at him. And look at the photo." She looked. It was a picture of two men on stage, one wearing a loud checked suit and a trilby jammed on his head, the other with a monocle and a swagger stick under his arm. The caption read, "Marvellous Max Miller and Pavilion Theatre manager Walter Irvine delight audiences at the opening night of Trevay's latest attraction." She looked up at him, wrinkling her brow. "I still don't get it. Look carefully at the man with the stick under his arm. Does he seem familiar?" She peered closer. No. "Walter Irvine?" She shook her head. "Better known as Colonel Stick?" She gasped and looked again. "Really? I'll bet Jack's life on it." Hearing his name, the terrier lifted his head from his paws and wagged his tail. Meanwhile, Simon parked his old Volvo outside the vicarage. The large bag of fish and chips on the seat next to him smelled enticingly of warm paper, hot grease and vinegar. He tucked the package under his arm and got out of the car. Immediately the front door opened and Penny flew out, wrapped in a huge beige cashmere poncho and carrying a fat plastic documents folder. She locked the door and kissed her husband. Simon never failed to be blown away by the fact that this glamorous, exacting, talented, lovely woman was his. He returned her kiss, and blinking his soulful chocolate-coloured eyes through his spectacles, he held out his free arm for her to take. "Good evening, Mrs. Cantor. Good day." She arranged her chic sunglasses on the top of her head and beamed up at him. "Great, yeah. How did your meeting with the unbearable Audrey go?" "Not bad. Pretty good, actually. Audrey rather helpful." "Excellent." So the two set off down the vicarage path to walk the short distance across the green to Gull's Cry. Thanks for getting the chish and fips. Helen wouldn't tell me what's going on, but she sounded so excited, I reckon Piran must have found something. "Pass the ketchup, would you, Pen? Thanks." Piran squirted a large pool of sauce on the open packet of chips. They hadn't bothered getting plates out, preferring to eat them straight from the paper wrapping. Don't you? Me too. For a while, the only sound was satisfied munching as everyone tucked in. Then Helen wiped her fingers on a piece of kitchen towel and kicked off the conversation. Simon, you start. How did the meeting go? He told them, just checking the time, he told them about the plans for flyers in windows, leaflets through letterboxes, and letters to the council. Good for Audrey and Jeff, that'll keep them busy. Who else was there? Simon duly listed the attendees, finishing, and Queenie, of course. She took Colonel's stick under her wing, kept him quiet with aniseed twists. Helen paused with a chunk of cod halfway between her plate and her lips. She darted a look at Perrin, who shook his head as a warning for her not to say anything just yet. What? Said Penny, immediately spotting what had passed. All in good time, Perrin answered infuriatingly. Now, Penny, your turn. Any of those actor types in your address book come good? Penny clapped her hands together, thrilled with what she had to tell. She moved her fish and chip paper to one side and opened the document wallet that had been sitting underneath. I think you're going to be very pleased, she beamed at them, waiting for the murmurs of wonder and approval, but kept them waiting a moment too long. Get on with it, woman, barked Perrin. Okay. Penny took the papers out of the wallet. Let's see. Well, I started by emailing the cast of Mr. Tibbs. Seeing as the series is being filmed locally, I thought they'd be supportive. Both David Cunningham and Dahlia Darling, the actors who play the two lead roles, bank manager cum sleuth Mr. Tibbs, and his secretary, Nancy Trumpet, have agreed to help in some way. Well, that's jolly good of them, said Simon, patting Penny's arm affectionately. And there's more. The Arts Council are launching a new campaign to get people to support their regional theatres, so we can get some publicity on the back of that. And, ta-da! Dear Julian Fellows has said he might, can't promise in blood, but might, yes, Helen was on the edge of her seat, be able to persuade Hugh Bonneville and Maggie Smith to join him for a special Downton Abbey night where they share a kind of behind-the-scenes gossipy chat with the audience. What's Downton Abbey? Asked Perrin, frowning. Shut up, Helen punched his arm. I'll tell you later. And, Penny continued, it looks as though we'll be getting some memorabilia from Doctor Who, signed by cast members past and present. David Tennant, swooned Helen. Yes, David Tennant. And my man in Hollywood is going to ask Quentin Tarantino's office for anything the great man can sign and send us too. Penny sat back looking very pleased with herself. Simon and Helen could only gaze at her in astonishment, their eyes like saucers. Wow, said Helen. Who's Quentin Tarantino? Asked Perrin. After it was explained exactly who Tarantino was, and Penny had poured out the last of the bottle of red wine, Perrin pulled out the newspaper cutting he'd shown to Helen earlier that day and passed it to Penny and Simon. Have a look at that. Simon and Penny hunched together and looked. It was Simon who got the connection first. Perrin, that's Colonel Stick, isn't it? Yes. So the man who first took charge of the theatre is still alive and in travail? That's right. And he was a music hall performer who knew Max Miller? Give the man a cigar. But he was at the meeting today. He told me he'd never missed a show, but I thought he meant a military show, that he liked nothing better than to get stuck into a battle. But he actually meant... I should think he did. Penny was listening hard and had finally put two and two together. So he is the piece of historic interest we need to save the pavilions. Correct. But how exactly? What can Colonel Stick do that could possibly help us save the theatre? Asked Helen. I mean, I'm sure he has lots of interesting anecdotes about the old days, but how many people really care about music hall now? And why would they be bothered about a retired theatre manager? Perrin leaned back in his chair and drained his glass. If you birds would finally stop your incessant twittering, I might be able to get a word in and enlighten you. Penny and Helen exchanged looks, but fell silent. I've been doing a bit of digging. Now, this Colonel Stick isn't just famous for his music hall act. He was also an avid adopter of amateur filmmaking back in the day. Now, judging from all the old theatre press cuttings I've dug out, our colonel was rubbing shoulders with the greats. I mean, not just music hall greats, but the biggest stars of the theatre world. He was friends with the likes of Laurence Olivier, Vivian Leigh, John Gielgud, Richard Burton, and after seeing as he was so keen on capturing it on film, I reckon those old home movies of his could turn out to be some very rare and highly desirable footage. Helen, Penny and Simon were agog. And people would be really interested to see that stuff, wouldn't they? Said Helen. Film memorabilia is highly sought after. There'll be collectors out there who'd pay a fortune for that sort of stuff. Isn't that right, Penny? Yes, she said, ever the businesswoman. Right then, well, I reckon one of us needs to have a chat with our colonel, said Fern. All eyes turned to Helen. You're such a people person, cooed Penny, nudging her friend in the ribs. And that's it. That's the last session for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, A Seaside Affair. I enjoyed writing that one. I remember, it's a long time ago, obviously, but I remember enjoying that as I wrote it. There we are. Have a wonderful weekend, a really good weekend. I'm going off to do a yoga class now, which is why I'm reading this. I must tie my hair. I'm so sorry about the hair. Have we all got this lockdown hair, lockdown fringe thing? I might get the kitchen scissors out and ask the dog to do it, but anyway. Look after yourselves. Have a super, super, super weekend. And I'll see you on Monday. And Monday's book is called A Good Catch. And it's a story of fishermen and confused romances and lives. So I hope you look forward to that. But thank you so much again for joining me. And it means the world to me. So lots of love and take care. See you Monday. Bye.